and welcome back to Analysis. We've just been discussing in the first half of the show the uncovering of a mass grave of almost 400 people near the village of Tomasica in Bosnia. The full implications of this discovery are still being worked out in the country. For many, it brings up the still painful memories of a very recent conflict. Many Bosnian Muslims, remembering the ethnic cleansing they suffered during the war, are still looking for justice and closure. But the government of the autonomous region of Republika Srpska, where Tomasica is located, has proven less willing to acknowledge the crimes that occurred there. And tensions between Bosnia's different ethnic groups are still high, many asking whether there really is a future for Bosnia as a unified country. Joining me in the studio to discuss this, we still have Kemal Pervanic, a campaigner and survivor of the camp at Omarska, as well as Zoran Pajic, a visiting professor at King's College, an international expert who has held positions at the UN and the Office of the High Representative of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And joining us by Skype from Sarajevo, we have Adam Boys, the Chief Operating Officer at the International Commission for Missing Persons. Welcome to the program. But first, let's look at this report by Alex MacDonald.
Although now a prosperous tourist destination, Sarajevo still bears the scars of the 4-year Bosnian War. Although there are few reliable statistics available on the demographics of the city, it is thought that hundreds of thousands of people fled during the 4-year siege in the mid-90s, leaving a population of around 300,000, the vast majority Bosniak Muslims. The violent sectarian conflict that ripped through the region following the collapse of Yugoslavia in the early 90s left many thousands in the country dead or unaccounted for. The International Commission on Missing Persons was established in 1996 at the behest of then-American President Bill Clinton, with the intention of recovering the missing victims of the war. Islam Channel visited their offices in Sarajevo to see how they conduct their work and what it means for the process of reconciliation, particularly in light of their work on the recently uncovered mass grave at Tomasica.
So if we actually go over here, it's one of my colleagues.
And what sort of things would the samples be? I mean, they'd just be sort of...
So these samples would... No, actually, like this is the reference section. So these samples would be for former Yugoslavia. Most of the samples are collected as blood on cards, collection cards. So these would be just like little punches from these cards where we will extract DNA and then we'll perform the analysis of DNA. We test the standard forensic markers called short tandem repeats, and by performing the kinship analysis, we're able to connect the DNA profiles obtained from reference samples to those obtained from bone samples, skeletal remains.
The recovery of the missing can provide closure for the victims of war, but it can also potentially provide closure for a country still struggling with its history and identity in light of a brutal ethnic conflict.
Telling the truth from the beginning to the end, it's extremely important for the reconciliation. It's a prevention for the future conflict. The war in the Western Balkans started with removing the bodies and remains from the Second World War, you know, using in media to spread the hate between the different ethnic groups, meaning that we are seeing our work not only to bring the closure to this generation, but also to prevent future generations to have the similar issues.
The Republika Srpska was formed following the collapse of Yugoslavia and the boycott of a referendum on independence by Bosnia. One of the country's 2 semi-autonomous regions, its first president, Radovan Karadzic, is currently awaiting trial, accused of crimes committed during the Bosnian War. The region has been pushing for independence now for many years, and the continuing Serb nationalist rhetoric of regional president Milorad Dodik suggests that there is little hope that Bosnia will remain a unified entity. While we were in Bosnia, a group of activists, anarchists and human rights campaigners in the city of Prijedor, located in the Republika Srpska, staged a demonstration against racism and fascism. The turnout numbered just over 20 or so people, with as many police as protesters. Just outside the city lies the mass grave of Tomasica. Bosnia has a long history of anti-fascism, with the partisans of World War II hailed as heroes by modern-day campaigners. The Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was formed after the war, an authoritarian, undemocratic system that nonetheless protected and promoted a multicultural, multi-ethnic society with the motto brotherhood and unity. That is now a distant memory in a country where ethnicity has become vital to most people's identities. Memorials to the Serbian soldiers killed in the Bosnian War litter the city of Prijedor, though none exists for the Muslim dead. The uncovering of Tomasica may be bringing up memories that many would rather forget. I mean, it would be fair to say in the Republic of Srpska there isn't enough attention given to the Bosniak victims.
Well, yes, Bosnia can crow at victims because the victims of war crimes are being politicized. That is a huge problem because our victims are somehow more holy than their victims, and that's what we're trying to break here. We're saying that these people, they were civilians. Killed children don't have ethnic prefix. They're children. Raped women, killed women, they're women. So we're trying to say that this should not be a political issue. We need to look at it from a humanist approach. So it is a reopening of old wounds, but we're hoping that we're all going to stand together and really denounce all war crimes against all people and all ethnic groups. And this is one of those opportunities where people that are accountable need to be found.
Community tensions in Prijedor are not going to disappear overnight. However, some do believe that the uncovering at Tomasica could lead to renewed openness and dialogue, which could put to rest the ghosts of Bosnia and Herzegovina forever. Alex MacDonald, Islam Channel.
Well, Adam Boyes, you're the Chief Operating Officer of the International Commission on Missing Persons. I mean, do you think that your work has actually been able to bring people together across these ethnic divides, or is it just maintaining the status quo?
It's a very good question. Part of the problem with it is that this has never been attempted in any context anywhere else in the world. So in the context of the former Yugoslavia, we've now actually recovered over 70% of the missing, and in Bosnia, over 74%, including 90% of those relating to Srebrenica. What we've noticed is that when it comes to the families of the missing that we deal with, 10, 12 years ago, they couldn't talk to each other. Now they have joined, they have created associations that operate on an inter-ethnic basis. They lobby governments for the release of information together. So we do believe that it does help. We also commissioned a study last year which showed that 95% of the population of this country, of the sample, believed that the process of looking for missing persons must continue and that it must be an inter-ethnic process.
Do you have sort of outreach programs where you go to Republika Srpska and try and explain what happened in the war, or is that beyond your sort of remit?
No, we work with family associations throughout the region. There are 120 family associations throughout the region. Most of the missing were in Bosnia. Some 30,000 people are missing in Bosnia, and that's on all sides. What our outreach is really to do with is drawing those family associations into the process, helping them reach out to other civil society organizations so that this issue can be sort of fairly treated by society as a whole. Our role is not to point the finger when it comes to the crime, the actual crime that caused the person to go missing. It's about trying to assist the governments of the region to take responsibility for what happened and for doing the right thing by their own citizens. So effectively, our outreach is about educating family members into sort of seeking their own rights. But to go on, we do see a great deal of denial, but I have to say that the level of denial about what happened has decreased over the years.
Well, let me come to Kemal Pevanic. I mean, you come from what is now Republika Srpska, from near Prijedor, and in the first half of the program we were talking about this mass grave and so on. And I believe some Bosnian Muslims have gone back to Prijedor. I mean, does that show there is a little bit of reconciliation going on?
Well, some people decided to go back when it was possible to return, and we have like two separate communities existing next to one another. For example, I was in Bosnia just last month and I was discussing these issues with my brother. He's been back for the last 9, 10 years. And he said, when it comes to business, everything is fine. But when the business deal is over, you know, we turn our backs to each other and everyone goes his own way. It just shows that the situation hasn't actually normalized very much since first people decided.
But at least he feels safe and his family to live there. They don't feel intimidated or pressured to leave again or anything.
Well, the presence of the international community still provides some kind of security to the individuals like my own brother. But the problem is we haven't had a real public debate about the events from the war. It doesn't matter which part of the country we are talking about. It doesn't matter what crimes we are talking about. There's been no real discussion. There's been no public debate about what went on during the war. And unfortunately, when it comes to the young generations, it's really dangerous because we have a segregated system of education where Muslims teach their children one version of a history, you know, Croats teach their children another version of history, Serbs teach their children a third version of history. So there is no shared common narrative about what happened during the war. So there's no a vision of a shared future. So
well, Zoran, it's right up your street. I mean, why isn't there this real reconciliation going on? Why isn't there this real narrative, common narrative being developed again?
Well, first of all, I should say that people have settled among their own kin and they feel comfortable with that way of life. And we have to be aware that all areas in Bosnia and Herzegovina, all cities and rural areas have been ethnically cleansed, either during the war, like in Republika Srpska, either in the Federation in the peacetime. I don't have to give you many examples, but let's take Sarajevo, which still advertises itself as a multi-ethnic, multicultural city, but it's over 90% of Muslim population in Sarajevo. So this gives some sort of excuse to people that they do not participate, they don't communicate with the others because they don't need to, basically.
But I remember, 20 years ago in Bosnia, people would say, "Oh, there's intermarriage and so on. We don't ask people at university whether they're Croat or Serb and all that sort of thing." I mean, now there's probably even less intermarriage, even less mixing.
No. I don't know about that, but about people communicating among themselves, that has long gone, to be honest with you. And you asked me about the prospect of reconciliation. It seems to me, really, that after the Dayton, many people, many NGOs tried to incorporate this idea into debate of, lobbying, in fact, for reconciliation. I think it was too early. Even now, it's too early. Why? Because Bosnia and Herzegovina still lacks a full presentation of facts of what happened, why it happened, and who was giving orders. And many NGOs, many groups, many honest people really tried to establish certain commissions or bodies for pushing for truth and reconciliation. But we have to be aware that even apologies that are publicly given by political leaders have been given in the past couple of years have been received with cynicism, from the victim group, because people don't trust each other, and political establishment in particular, they do not trust. By the way, maybe it's not so significant for this channel, but there's a big difference between reconciliation word in English and the same translated word in the languages in Bosnia and Herzegovina. When translated, it's much more demanding to demand people to go down that road. But that's for another debate, I suppose. But in any case, what I think it's worth saying is that denial is the most favorite activity among population in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with all ethnic groups. Of course, the Serbs or the Serb political establishment is sticking to the idea or sticking to the soundbite that the war happened. That's it. The war happened, let's draw the line and move on. But if you scratch a little, you will find out that among Croats and Bosniaks in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there is a high degree of denial. And we've seen that recently when certain big crime cases were discovered. that Bosnian or Bosniak army committed against the civilian Serb population in Sarajevo, like famous case of Kazani, then Croat political establishment committed in Bugojno, Bosniak political establishment committed in Bugojno against Croats, putting the people in the local stadium, torturing and all that. So as long as we have this denial as part of people's identity and people mentality, it's almost impossible to go down the road of dialogue. I'm not saying reconciliation, just a dialogue. And just to mention that UNDP sponsored a big opinion poll in Bosnia and Herzegovina at the beginning of this year. And the results show that 80% of people in Bosnia still go to bed and wake up with this obsession by the past, by the recent past. Although I have to say also that 50% of them would favor some sort of a dialogue with the other ethnic group. But of course, I'm a big promoter of that. But on the other hand, there's always a risk that such dialogue may be transformed into some sort of shouting match,
Well, Adam Boyce, I mean, now that this grave has been uncovered, will you be using that, to try and get Bosnian Serb media to cover these things? I mean, is it part of your role to try and get the media to report on these things?
Yeah, we do provide a great deal of information to the public. This is this particular grave is of crucial value in the War Crimes Tribunal process in The Hague. This particular excavation is key to two of the current high-profile investigations that The Hague is doing. In all cases, just to go back to what my colleagues were saying earlier, that it is very important to have a process that can lead to reconciliation. I think that the use of the word reconciliation is rather a loaded one, and I would agree with that completely. I think that to establish the truth and then move towards reconciliation as a consequence is a much healthier way to look at it. And I also believe that it takes a very, very long time to overcome these wounds. In the World Bank report 2 years ago, it estimated that for each year of conflict, of this sort of conflict, a full generation was needed to overcome. So we are talking about an extremely long process.
Well, let me ask Kemal whether can it be hastened by the EU in any way? I mean, Bosnia would like to get into the European Union. Can the EU in some way make it conditional on less denial, more discussion, more acceptance of the blame for who did what?
I don't think we have reached that point yet. For example, before Croatia joined the European Union, one of the conditions was to prosecute certain war crimes. But in Bosnia, I don't think we have reached that stage yet. And I think that Bosnia, as a member of the European Union, would help to deal with a lot of these issues, because then, Bosnian politicians would have to apply different rules. But right now, my feeling is that Bosnian citizens would like Bosnia to become part of the European Union, but Bosnian politicians don't want to bring Bosnia into the European Union. So they actually want to keep it away.
Well, is there any way that the Dayton, Ohio agreement can be sort of amended? Because it did basically allow for division, even though it's meant to be sort of common institutions at the top and the presidency rotates and all this sort of thing. But is there any way that one could minimize the power of these ethnic units and get them more to collaborate?
I see where you're leading the question in a way. But I have to say that it's all in the interpretation, in fact. Even Dayton Peace Agreement, as it stands now, as it has been, with us, I don't know, for what, 15 years? 20, not 20, 15
18,
years.
I think.
Yeah, 18 years. Allows for an extensive interpretation. And I remember when I worked with Lord Ashdown in the Office of the High Representative, we managed, for a couple of years, to stick to this idea of interpreting the Dayton Agreement in a functional way. In other words, to give competencies and responsibilities to the state-level institutions, which was the aim of Dayton Agreement.
The central institutions.
Central,
Yeah.
I mean, on the
Yeah.
state level,
Yeah.
central institutions. But then, after a while, all that has been rolled back with little help of the international community, I have to say.
Rolled back by the local politicians.
By the local politicians, but I mean, not contested by the international community at all. So you were asking about the role of the international community in pursuing this idea of a more functional, or not centralized, but a more responsible state on the state level. I think that this has to be resolved within the country. It's difficult to expect from the international community to do anything about it. Just to give you an example, Republika Srpska has been accused by Bosniak politicians mainly as a product of genocide, as a product of war crime against humanity. And then the RS politicians have rejected that, of course. But what the RS really needs is to somehow break with the legacy of genocide that was committed in 1992-95, and somehow for the present generation and the present leadership, in fact, to get away from that. But instead, the culture of denial is preventing them to do that, and they're still living in the
I'm sorry,
past.
we've just run out of time. I wish you could say more, but we have to end on that rather pessimistic note about the continuation of the state of denial. Thank you very much indeed, Adam Boys. Thank you, Kemal Pavanic. Thank you, Zoran Pajic. And thank you all for watching.